This is the Doing Scary Things podcast. I'm Katie. I'm a veteran photographer, a serial entrepreneur, an aspiring author, and a relentless optimist. I'm a slow-talking, deep thinker from the Appalachian Mountains.
I'm Anna. I'm a prodigal musician, an accidental psychotherapist, and I'm living life mostly by experiment and endless curiosity. I'm a redheaded speed talker from a Midwestern farm town.
The purpose of this podcast is to talk to people who are doing some pretty scary things in their life about what it takes for them to push past fear and keep themselves going every day.
We'll also unpack the vulnerable things we're pursuing in our own lives and hopefully offer encouragement to you wherever you are on your journey.
Man, that was brilliant.
Welcome back, everybody. We are so thrilled to have an interview with Meg Kissack today. She is the dazzling creator of That Hummingbird Life and host of the Couragemakers Podcast. She's leading a tribe of multi-passionate, world-changing women, and we just love her. Meg is a colorful adult person, and she uses some colorful adult language. If you find that's not appropriate for you or your listening setting, this is your official notice. Without further ado, we hope you enjoy Meg as much as we do.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners and tell them a little about yourself?
Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Meg. I run That Hummingbird Life, which is kind of the online home for creative and multi-passionate women. And I also run a podcast called Couragemakers. And it's a great excuse basically for me to ramble on and chat to really cool women all over the world. And yeah, I live my life by the motto, everything changes when you believe you matter. And yeah, that's a bit about me. I love bright colours, swearing, and all the good creative fun stuff.
That's amazing. I love that motto, and I've loved getting to know you over the last, I guess, year and a half or something.
At least.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I was a guest on your podcast a while back, and that was kind of how I was introduced to you. And I've just been super inspired by the community you've created around these ideas. What's that been like? How did you kind of take the license to get started with the podcast? And how has that been building that community?
I think part of the license sometimes in doing creative projects is imagining that you've kind of got the gut feeling that you know it will work, but then you've got the fear and anxiety of, well, nobody's ever going to listen. So sometimes I think you can kind of riff off that a bit and just think, well, am I allowed to swear on your show?
You do you, yeah.
Yeah, so I think sometimes it's easier to kind of say fuck it and just go for it because you're not sure. You're not sure how it's going to go either way. So I think in terms of having the license to do it, I think it gets to a place where you realise you're the only person that can give yourself permission to do it. And it takes a long time to get there. I mean, That Hummingbird Life is really easy and my work is easy just to describe now, but I had years of being like, what do I do? You know, all those questions like the stupid elevator pitch. I was like, I don't know what I do. I don't know how to describe what I do. And I started off very much in the basis of working with women world changers who'd burnt out of non-profit jobs and self-care. And it's grown as my journey has grown. So it's kind of been a lovely wonky dream chasing journey so far.
Oh, wonky among my favorite words. Thank you for saying that. It is.
No, I love that. And I hope it's okay to say me and you have had some personal conversations about the dreaded Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner or whatever, holiday dinner with family, where it's like, what do you do? And you can feel so belittled in those moments, totally. If you don't have that elevator pitch ready or know exactly, so it does take a long time to get there. I think that's an interesting point.
Totally. It feels more prepared and safe if you have that in the can so that people will, you have something to throw back at people when they throw you questions.
And I think it can get to the point where you've got it rehearsed in your head that somebody asks you and you're thinking, oh, wait, what was it? But I think I found that it probably seems seriously counteractive, but I've found that sometimes it's just easier to frame what you do differently to people who get it and who don't get it. For example, I joined a co-working space and a lot of it was businessmen in very smart business attire. And it was very much the case of when they asked you what you did, it was like, what can you do for me? That kind of exchange. And it was much easier for me to say graphic designer because, part of what I do is graphic design, or just, I think it took me a while to get to a place where I thought, actually, I don't mind that I don't explain exactly what I do to you, because I've had so many experiences of explaining what I do and somebody not get it and me going away feeling really shitty, that it's actually a lot better for me to just, I think there's a permission piece there that you don't have to explain your soul's work to everybody, especially if they're just going to be dream shitters about it.
I love that.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
You don't owe it to them.
No. And if it zaps energy out of you and you walk away wondering why you do what you do and it kind of delegitimizes your work, then no.
Yeah. I think that's so true, as long as you can still know and be really confident of who you are.
Absolutely.
It's like I do the same thing. It's just way less complicated to tell people I'm a photographer. It's absolutely true. I'm a photographer. Does that explain how I spend 80% of my time? No. Yeah. But
Totally.
it's like, it's almost like this secret special piece that, like, if people want to go deeper with me and like invest in a relationship, then I'll share it, Yeah. And maybe that's kind of weird, but it's like, as long as you're not letting those people, like you said, take that away from you. I love that.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the same thing when people, ask, how are you? And you're I'm fine.
Fine.
Yeah. Even if you're not fine, it's like, who's your audience?
It's a fine line.
Are they asking because they want to know, or is it just, whatever?
It's a fine line, though, isn't it? Between being authentic, protecting yourself, and trying not to hide yourself. It's a really fine line between how you balance that and how you protect yourself, because I know definitely when I really package the things I do really small, I know for a fact that I make sure it's only with people that it's a passing conversation. You can tell sometimes, can't you, when they say, what do you do? And you can see their eyes kind of glaze over. They don't really care. They just ask it because they mean to be polite. And you look at them and you think, I cannot be bothered. You're not going to get it anyway. But like you said, it's also being willing to go there with the people that get it. I think that takes a lot of courage.
Definitely. It definitely does.
Yeah, it totally does. Well, I'm curious about Couragemakers and the Hummingbird Life. Did those things come about at the same time, or did one lead to the other, or how related are they?
Good question. So That Hummingbird Life started in 2014, and it is very much an outlet for me as a blog because I remember I was sat on the sofa like Googling how to slow down or how to pause. I was like, how do you, I just didn't know how to do it. So I had a breakdown and was off work for a while, and I had to reconfigure the way I did things. So that's how That Hummingbird Life started. And I found lots of tools, and I decided that I wanted to help other women in similar predicaments, because what I was finding was there were so many like-minded women around me who were dropping like flies. When I met these women, I could see the passion. And then within 6 months, you just look, and they felt very much like I'd felt, like a shell of the person they were. So that's why I started That Hummingbird Life. And then as I started growing it and it started becoming more about dream chasers, I realised that I really wanted to make the conversation two-way. I mean, as you can tell, I'm a bit of a chatterbox. I love being nosy and asking loads of questions. And I thought, what a cooler way of spending my time than getting to chat to women who largely I don't know all around the world who are doing cool things. And podcasting made such a difference in my own journey. But I realised that I was sick of hearing the same stories. I was sick of hearing the same guests on the same shows, and it all seemed really easy. And while it was really reassuring to hear people who were doing life on their own terms, that became my new normal, it seemed so linear. And I thought, well, okay, these don't actually capture how messy the process is, and actually we need to have honest conversations. So that's how Couragemakers has come about. It's definitely influenced, like Couragemakers and That Hummingbird Life, they're kind of part of the same bundle. I wonder sometimes about packaging them together completely, but I don't know. But for now, that's how they are. And it's been fun for it to organically grow as I've grown. I couldn't have had any clue in the beginning how that Couragemakers would even be a thing. So it's been, for somebody who doesn't like uncertainty, it's been a lot of risk taking, but it's been nice to see it blossom to be really cheesy.
Not cheesy at all. No, I love that. That's one thing that when we started this podcast, we sort of set out to talk to some people who are in the middle. And I think it's exactly what you're talking about. It's not just the people who have got it all together seemingly. So what has that looked like for you? What is some of that messy process you mentioned?
There's so much mess. I don't even know where to begin. And I think that's true for some of us. It can be so tempting to hide all the messy stuff because it feels uncomfortable. For me, it's felt like spending years not particularly knowing who I was or where I was going. It's been really trying to decide who is authentically me. I've had a lot of situations in my life where, be it work or personal situations, I've had to don my shine and be the smallest version of myself I can to survive. So I'd say a lot of it has been the things you don't see, the personal things that go on in your life. Yeah, I think it can be really difficult when you do work around courage or you do work around creativity to have struggles with it in your own life and be able, it's like the whole thing of it's hard just to take your own medicine, isn't it? So
yes,
it's really hard when you're struggling with the same thing because you start feeling like a fraud. So I've definitely been there and had to kind of grab my own hand and pull myself back up and think, okay, no, we're all good. I think the messy middle for me has been perseverance. And I think that can be the scariest thing. I think actually waking up, giving it a go, not knowing what the outcomes are, the uncertainty and the perseverance part have definitely been the messiest bits for me.
Yeah, it really stood out to me when you said it just looked easy, it just looked linear and easy. And that didn't appeal to you because, life isn't actually like that, especially when you're taking risks.
It's like going back to the kind of fairy tales when we were little. Yeah. And I think it can be so tempting to buy into them, but the reality comes crashing down at one point or another.
Yeah.
And I think it's holding yourself through that, really.
Yeah. When we started the Doing Scary Things podcast, part of it is that we are doing our own scary thing. And for me, and I know we talked about this too, but a hugely important part of that was to keep encouraging ourselves. It's like drawing a line in the sand, even if no one does listen, we're still going to do our scary things.
Yeah.
And it's like going that extra step to make sure that we stay committed to it when it gets messy and when perseverance is the main thing that's going on, when it feels like not much else is going on, I'm sure that there's going to be all those moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thanks for sharing that and being really honest about it. Because I can't tell you how many times. So you send out a really awesome weekly email and it's just full of encouragement. And I can't tell you how many times I've read that. It is so powerful. Just to be honest, like on the flip side of that, there are times when I've shared things that I hope are encouraging to other people. And then there's like a few times where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I need to listen to this. Like this is like, I do have to take my own medicine, So how is that the same for you? Like when you're sending those emails, yeah. Are you like, wait, I need to get this in my brain?
Yeah, I think that's sometimes so much of what writing is. You're writing what you most need to hear. And yes. I think sometimes you can read it back and be like, oh shit, that's the thing. That's what I needed right now. And other times you're completely oblivious to it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes also you're more open to hearing your own medicine. Other times I think you distance yourself a bit. But I think, I think in terms of the work we all do in the world, ultimately when it comes down to like your soul work, I think we all do the work that either we wish had been there for us when we were younger or the work that we most need in the world. I think it all comes back to that, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ever since I've known about you, I have been really taken by this concept of being multi-passionate. And that was a really uplifting concept to me because I feel just really scattered a lot of the time. And it was really helpful to even have one word that was like a positive rendition of the way that I function in my life. So thank you for that, first of all. But I really want to know all about that and how you came to that term even and that concept and what it means to you.
Okay. So it's going back a bit to when I had that breakdown. I remember distinctly like lying in bed and just Googling like the kind of variations of what's wrong with me. And this is like what happens when you're multi-passionate, isn't it? I think you think, why can't I stick to things? Why do I burn out on projects? What's wrong with me? So, and I stumbled across their website, Putty Like by Emily Wapnick, and she was talking all about what it means to be a multi-potentialite. And again, I think the great thing about the word multi-passionate, I think for each person who is multi-passionate, it's like a light bulb moment. Like it's this piece of reassurance and encouragement that actually there's nothing wrong with you. It's actually a superpower. It's the case that your brain works slightly different and there's all of these things that you're interested in and that doesn't make you wrong. We get all of these kind of jack of all trades things and this pressure from society to pick the one thing. And for some people that works. Like some people choose their thing and they dedicate their life to it and that is what sustains them. That's what they love. But when it's not and you feel forced to do that, I think that's when life can become really stagnant and you feel a bit trapped. So I think it can be massively, massively freeing. You have all these thoughts about how you must be doing something wrong, and you look around other people and you think, well, they found their one thing. What's my thing? Yeah. And I think realizing that your thing is the theme that brings everything together, and just for example, being passionate about learning or passionate about finding new things is a really exciting way to live life. And once you give yourself permission to do it, you have so much more fun. Rather than thinking, oh, great, here's the next thing. I wonder when that's going to be over. It's so much more fun to be like, this is me. This is who I am. And I can look back and say that, there's things that I used to be passionate about that I'm not anymore, but they're kind of like breadcrumbs. They lead you to where you are now. And I think that's really exciting.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking you reminded me of something when you said jack of all trades, because the other half of that is master of none. Yeah. Kind of good at a bunch of things, but you're not really good at anything. Like, that's the implication. And that's totally where that negative connotation comes in, It doesn't have to be like that.
It doesn't have to be that stigma. Right. You can be good at more than one thing. You really can.
And it's okay to not be the best at one thing. I mean, we've talked about that before too. Like, being being good at a bunch of things isn't inferior to being the best at one thing. Yeah.
And I think that's when your uniqueness comes together, when you put your interests and your skills and your strengths together in a way only you can. I think that's when the magic happens.
Definitely.
Magic!
We're here for the magic.
That sounded like an audiogram.
Yes, it
did. That's when the magic happens. Love it. It is, though. It totally is. Anyway.
Yes. No, I love it. Thanks for asking that. What have been some of the most rewarding experiences since you've started this whole community, the blog and the podcast? Have any of those kind of kept you going along the way?
So I think the most rewarding have been the emails from people who were in near enough identical shoes that I was before I started, and them realizing that they're not alone. Because I think that's one of the biggest things you can give people. I think ultimately that's what keeps you going. And it's just, I know we don't all want to rely on external validation, but when you're doing work in the world that's trying to change something, you need to know you're making an impact. And I think that's been one of the most rewarding things. So that's one of them. The second is the amazing friends I've met, like Katie. I love you to bits. I mean, you've been on the podcast 3 times now. I mean, there's definitely a 4th coming up. And there has to be, right?
I hope so.
And, I've got friends now all over the world that I consider really, really close friends. And I've made, I think, selfishly, I don't know if it is selfishly. I grew up my whole life until the past, I'd say 4 years, thinking my people have to be here somewhere. Where are they? Like, which tunnel are they in? Because nobody has given me the map.
Right. Yeah, and how did I get so lost?
Yeah.
Where is everybody?
Yeah. And it's kind of like the multi-passionate thing, looking around you thinking, am I doing something wrong? You know what? And I've spent all of my life kind of not fitting in. And it has just been amazing to find my people and to find like-minded people who've got similar views on the world and don't see life as all rainbows and butterflies. They know that, some stuff is really, really challenging. And they're really wildly creative. And that has just been one of the most rewarding things, is realizing that for all of us, our tribes are out there somewhere. It's just a case of finding them.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking while you were saying that is, Seth Godin's like a marketing genius. And he has that book about, I think it's called Tribes. It's Find Your Tribe. And I was thinking, you found your tribe. Mm-hmm. Like and there's not, I think, a higher accomplishment that could be accomplished when you're doing this kind of work than, like you said, to find those people who, even just are raising their hand saying, me too. Like, I totally get this.
And it's been so nice to, and this isn't me trying to toot my horn. I think there's so much of the self-help industry whereby an expert stands on the stage and says, I've got everything figured out, and everybody looks up to that person as a guru. Mm-hmm. And it creates that dynamic. It's been such an amazing experience to actually get to know people who email and they become dear friends. It's like, we are all in this together. Let's help each other out. That has been so special. And I think that's one of the most special things about the community, because I see so many well-intentioned communities online where there's such a hierarchy difference and there's such a trying to prove you live the most attainable lifestyle. And if you follow what I do, you can be like me. And that's like, I don't wish that on anyone.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking. But like It's been amazing coming from that angle because I've made such genuine friendships and genuine connections, and it has been, and I think going back to your question before in terms of it being so rewarding, it is so rewarding and satisfying and fulfilling to find work that I do that doesn't deplete me, because I got so used to finding work that really helped other people, but I'd be going to bed like I cannot do anymore, or I would feel like my soul was being sucked out of me, but I was helping other people. So to find work that connects with other people, helps other people, and makes me feel great doing it, it's like work that sets my soul on fire. It's just magic. It really is.
Yeah, I'll have what she's having.
Yeah.
I'd say it's been a very bumpy road.
Yeah. Well, and like I said earlier, I appreciate you sharing the honest parts of that. But yes, absolutely, to what you're saying, if the work you're doing, it doesn't matter who it's helping if it's not helping you. Thank you for saying what you said about the people standing on the stage saying, follow these 10 steps and you'll be where I am, because I just don't believe that. I don't think that it's very likely at all that the same thing could happen twice exactly the same way. So part of our message is, you know what, we can't give you the steps because they're going to be different for you than they were for me, but we're here to encourage you along the way. You know, there's going to be a way to get there. You just, you know, you have to start.
Yeah, just empowering people to find their own way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't wish my life on anyone else either.
And I love you both for doing that. You know, I think for a lot of people, it's radical, this notion that you can do work for other people that also lights yourself up. Because I think as women, we're taught to put everybody else's needs first. And it's kind of the twofold thing, isn't it? We're told to put everybody else's needs first and also believe in the fairy tale, whether that's kind of the fairy tale of working for yourself and making 6 figures within 3 months, or whether that's listening to the person on the stage telling you, like, here are these 10 things, you do them, you get to be me. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's hard.
It's jacked. Well, I have a question. The community that you found your people and you found them to be wildly creative. And I want to know more about that too. What's your view of creativity and how has it expanded or changed since finding your people?
I love that. Yeah, I was really creative as a kid, grew up, got really blocked because I was a good writer, cue the whole parent, you're going to be the next J.K. Rowling, we're going to buy all this stuff with the money. Well-intentioned, but like for 12-year-old, you're like, what do I do with that? So I stopped creating for a while, and I think starting That Hummingbird Life was my kind of first proper foray into getting back into the creativity and letting myself do that. So I think it was first and foremost a creative outlet. And the second thing is you can't not walk the talk. I can't be surrounded by all these creative people. And creativity is contagious at the end of the day. You know, you see other people doing creative stuff, you just get inspired. So it's definitely encouraged me to be a lot more creative. And again, I think it's encouraged me to be more creative in terms of, okay, so if I don't want to go down this model of there's this blueprint for life, if I don't want to be that person on the stage spouting all this rubbish I don't believe in, like, there's got to be a creative way of doing it, which is more authentic. So I think it's both a creative approach to business and also creativity in my own life. And I think it's a practice, isn't it? And, you know, I've got creative practices in my own life, but I can't say I can't say I wake up excited all the time to do them. It's just not like that. There's some element of having to make yourself, like I've done coming up to 2 100-day projects this year. And I can tell you, when I was doing Medium for 100 days, like writing on Medium every day, there were days when I thought, I have not got anything to say. And I think sometimes it's a perseverance piece as well. I think being surrounded by creative people reminds you can do it.
Does that ever turn on its head where you're seeing other people do creative things and you're discouraged because you feel like, oh, I could never do that?
Totally, especially if I'm getting into something new. Because I find you get really excited about a project, you go and see what other people are doing to get inspiration, and at some point that tips into comparison. You know, like take art journaling, for example. You can convince yourself you'd be the world's worth without even picking up a marker pen. You know, by the time you've looked at everybody else's stuff, you can convince yourself, well, I'm never going to get there. And I think that's also the problem in a lot of ways with things like Instagram is, and I think it's getting better, is that we don't see the messy middle. We don't see the beginner stages. We just see the end result. And it's like the whole bollocks of the overnight success thing in terms of it's never an overnight success. You don't see the hard work, the grit, the moments when somebody didn't want to do it. You don't see all the rough drafts that go in the bin. You don't see all the times they've had to be picked up by other people or pick themselves up. And it is so easy to look at yourself and look at that person, imagine that there's no gap between you at all and think, I'm never going to get there. It can be hugely discouraging.
I love that. I have chills. It's true, though. It's a very important message people need to hear. There's not a difference. If there's a difference in where you're at from somebody else, they've probably been at it longer, like you can get there.
Totally.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all that. So I wanted to turn things around just a little today. So something that you always ask people who come on your podcast is, what does courage mean to you? Did I get that right? Did I ask the right question?
Yeah, I think it's, what does being a courage maker mean to you?
What does being a courage maker mean to you?
Sneaky. When somebody asks you what your favourite band is and you forget every single,
I've never listened to music ever. I don't remember.
That excuse isn't going to work, is it?
That is the perfect
I think courage making means to me persevering, doing the things that scare you, even when your voice shakes, realising that when you are most courageous, you do not feel courageous. In that moment, you feel shit scared, you feel frightened, you feel really weak, you wonder if you're going to make it. But actually, you look back over your life and those are the moments where you think, wow, who was that did that? But in the moment, you are not thinking like that at all. And I think courage is an everyday thing. I don't think courage is this whole, I'm going to go skydiving tomorrow. It's having the courage to show up, having the courage to be honest. And also, I think a lot of it is just showing up as you are. And, whenever you show up in the world, you risk rejection, you risk the mean comments, you risk it failing. But actually, I think the kind of double whammy we've got as creative women who are doing courageous things is that the more creative you are, the better you can get at imagining the worst case scenarios. I think we get wildly creative about, okay, what happens if this goes wrong? Oh, well, if this project doesn't go wrong, I'm not going to have a home, then my dog's going to get this disease and I won't be able to afford the vet and the dog's died and then I haven't got this home and the dog's dead. Do you know what I mean? You're so far beyond. And that's in the beginning of you thinking, I wonder if I could write a book, and then you're automatically interjected with those just ridiculous. And I say ridiculous because they are, but I know they don't feel it at the time. I'm not trying to belittle anybody. But, I think that can be hard. And it's just, I think, courage and creativity go hand in hand. I've completely lost myself. But, I think it's taking it a day at a time. And realising that there's going to be bumps in the road and that's normal.
Yeah. I love that. That's really powerful. Yeah, I think I heard something recently. Obviously, this probably isn't very scientific, but it was something like 90% of the scenarios you imagine will never happen, So why are you wasting your time thinking about the things that aren't happening? They're not real, Think about the things that are, do the things that are real.
And sometimes I get really silly with myself. I think if you look at kids, their fears, I think it was the number one biggest fear of any kid is getting fat. And I'm I'm already there. So we just go for it. And I reclaim that in a positive way. But do you know what I mean? It's, but then you look at the serious side of that and you look at, I think, I can't remember who said the quote. I'm going to have to send it to you after, but it's something the graveyard is the richest place in the world because that's where all the ideas and the dreams that never happened exist. And it's so true. You look at all of our biggest fears and that sobers me on days where I'm really feeling like giving up. It's no, I fight for this. I fight so that people get to tell their stories and we need to put our voices out there. But it's scary stuff, isn't it?
That is sobering.
Sorry, I've just depressed you now. I was taking it ooh.
No.
It's also just motivating, it puts a lot of really good perspective on your fear. And is fear going to drive those things to the grave? Are you going to allow that to happen or not?
I love what Liz Gilbert says about fear, this whole idea that, fear is always going to be in your life. So you might as well take it on a road trip with you, but it gets to sit in the backseat. It is not taking control of the wheel. And I think, this whole idea of, kick fear in the face and just this idea of living fearlessly, it's just a myth. It's never going to happen. I think we need to find a way to coexist with fear.
Yes, I know exactly the part of Big Magic that you're talking about. And I love that. And it's almost like saying, and I think this is the example she gives. If not, I'm just totally paraphrasing. But, it's like a writer who, it's not fun to sit down every day and write. And there's a million things going through your mind. But it's like, oh, hey, fear, there you are again. I was expecting you, let's totally do this together, because that's our only option. You're not going to leave. So here we go, and I just think that's really cool.
Right. It's like you can expect it and accept it on some level instead of spending all your energy trying to reject it and kick it in the face or whatever.
Yeah.
It can be there. Like the idea that whatever good is going to happen can't coexist with fear is really crippling. It's a really crippling belief.
I'm either going to sound completely sane or like I've lost it. So I think it's the second one. I was in a therapy session a while ago and talking about fear and uncertainty, because it's stuff I've really struggled with. And I see my fear as like this stick chasing me where I constantly berate myself. And then I realized there's two other really important characters. I've got my anxiety. She's like this old woman who's too scared to do anything. And she's got like, when you see somebody and they look like haunted by the things they didn't do, and sometimes I'm like, well, you can stay at home today. If you you get to stay at home. And then I also think of like the wise woman, and that really helps me. When I think fear along for the ride, I also think of having this wise woman who is really our older future selves who can guide us. And I think thinking of it in that way, you can reach your intuition. It sounds really, really fluffy and woo-woo, much more than I am. But I think sometimes, if you can imagine what your future self would be, or what a wiser version of yourself would be, you get to the intuition that you can't find logically, when that anxiety and the fears are taken over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's woo-woo at all. I think that's actually a really helpful practice. If you can't figure out your first step, for example, or your next step, okay, picture where you want to be in 10 years. Picture where you want to be in 5 years. Okay, how are you going to get there? Yeah. Think through that. I mean, to me, that's a very logical way to go about it. Yeah. Also, please write a children's book about that. About the women and the stick.
I will do it. It's going to come second to my children's book about my house rabbits. They're called Harold and Gilbert. And I reckon they're going to be like time-traveling educational rabbits. It's like a very idea that is way on the back burner, but it's going to happen someday.
Yes.
And they can go through all the historical periods and be these sort of fluffy bunnies. Anyway, totally digressing.
That idea does not need to go to the grave.
No, it doesn't. And you know what? They're going to face some scary stuff on their travels. You can't tell me they're not. So
true.
I believe in them.
Yeah, I agree that that's not making you sound anything but totally sane and wise too, because it's like you're saying, you have this power of imagination that even gets more cultivated the more you're engaging your creativity. And you can use that power to do something like imagine, the haunted old woman or the wise woman, or you can be writing your dog's tombstone. Like you were saying earlier, like, I'm going to lose my house, then I can't afford the vet.
Yeah.
And then my dog dies.
The dog's already dead.
Like, it's the same imagination.
We've killed the
dog in April, and it has already died.
Yeah, same imagination.
Yeah, totally. 100% with you.
We sort of have a final question of sorts also. And it's not always final, but it's one that we always make sure we ask, because we really want to know from your experience and your wisdom what advice you might give or what you might say to somebody who is doing their scary thing. And they might be at the pre-contemplation stage where they haven't even taken the first step, or maybe they have, maybe they're in the middle. What would you say to somebody who's doing a scary thing?
I think it sounds complete rubbish until you do it, but fear loses its power once you address it. Like, fear doesn't have the same hold over you once you start doing the thing. Of course it does in the first couple of steps, but you'll be amazed at what happens and how far you can get that you haven't thought about fear. A huge lesson in my life was I was so scared of being on video. Like, I never thought I would ever be able to do it ever. So I set myself a 100-day challenge thinking, right, I'm not going to do it. Like, that's not going to happen. Day 1, terrified. Day 2, terrified. Day 6, loved it. And it was like, what is all this fear been about? And it just really sobering that the fear of doing the thing is usually scarier than the thing itself. You know, it's thinking about the consequences, and you don't know how you're going to react in that situation unless you've ever done it. You may really, really surprise yourself. And I think it's fair to say, and I think you both agree, that we all surprise ourselves when we do scary things. There's strength in you that you don't know that's there, that's almost hidden until you do the scary thing. So if anything else, do it for self-exploration and growth, and just see if you surprise yourself, because I think we all have these ideas of getting on the stage and slipping off the stage and our underwear comes off. You know, we have all these, I don't know why your underwear came off in that scenario. I think I was thinking of there's a story about Ewan McGregor, right? He was doing his first ever play and he was naked during a scene and he slipped and went legs wide open into the audience. And I remind myself of that sometimes. I'm like, well, that's not going to happen. So we're all good.
Nobody's naked.
Also, God bless you, Ewan McGregor. I love you so much.
So
that is amazing. But here's another example of being afraid of things that would never happen. Why is your underwear flying off? That was the best example ever.
I think it's just that case, isn't it? We go to the stupid examples, they never happen anyway. People are much better than they are not. You know, I think we forget how many good people there are in the world. Just do it with that in mind and just go for it. Sometimes you just need to stop thinking and just do it. And just kind of close your eyes and grit your teeth and it'll be over. You'll get through it and you'll be so much proud of yourself when you do.
I love it.
I love it too.
I need daily pep talks, Meg.
I need this daily.
I know. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing with our listeners.
Yeah, they're going to love you so much. They do. I'm just going to speak for them. They love you so much already.
Thank you for inviting me on. This has been so much fun. I have so much admiration for what you both do. And it is just...
Well, ditto.
Yeah.
Okay, so where can everybody find you online?
Okay, so you can find me on my kind of online home, thathummingbird.life.com. I'm most active on Instagram these days at Meg Kissack. I think it could be That Hummingbird Life. That's not great that I don't know that, but hey ho.
This just in, it's That Hummingbird Life. On Insta. Yes.
Oh my God.
Well, thank you so much, Meg.
Yes, it was such a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for doing what you do, guys. Like, talking about scary things takes a hell of a lot of courage, and you're helping so many people, and you're like the perfect combination ever. You really are.
You. We'll receive that and not analyze all the things that could go wrong in the future.
Yes.
The dog dying, the knickers.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us today. If you like what you've heard, take a second to subscribe or share it with a friend. There's plenty more information in our show notes, including a link to where you can listen to our music on Spotify. See you next week.
Hello?
No, I'm just gonna, I thought it was on silent. I think that's reminding me about this podcast interview, which is so ridiculous.